Come and shoot the breeze with myself and guests as we deep dive into some topics that may just pin your eyelids right back. So good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all our viewers out there, and welcome to another series of Shoot the Breeze with myself, host Mandy Horton. And today's guest, we have Gina Noetica joining us. And Gina is a water communicator. And so we're going to have a little conversation, a big conversation actually, because Gina's been traveling not just country, globally really, and doing bits and pieces with water. So I'll let you introduce yourself a wee bit and yeah, tell us about your journey with water.
Sure, yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Mandy. It's always really nice to connect with you and your audience. And I know a lot of people that will be listening to this because they follow you will just be very, very well aware of all the spiritual practices that go into water and water communication. I'm really sorry, Mandy, but there's been a knock at the door. Can,
No worries, I'll just pause.
is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
So good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all our viewers out there around the globe. And thank you for joining us for another series of Shoot the Breeze with myself, host Mandy Horton. And if you would like to subscribe to the channel, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. And absolutely share this too to anyone else that you may feel would be interested, because we love spreading the good news. And today, my guest here is Gina Noetica. And welcome, Gina.
Thanks, Mandy, for having me. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here and to connect with you all.
Oh, thanks for coming on. And I love this conversation. I know I'm going to love this conversation because Gina is a water communicator and has been tapping into the codes of the water and this new energy that's coming through into this new energy that we all are now and what we're creating on the planet. And water's coming in to assist in that way as well, isn't it, Gina?
It is, yeah, in a
Yeah.
really deep way, yeah.
Very, very beautiful. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to just introduce yourself a wee bit and then let us know how you got into this and how it all unfolded and what you're up to, because I know it's amazing.
Sure, yeah. Well, for me, I'm still kind of piecing it together. It's interesting how I work with, when I say my team, it's like, I don't want to call them my guides because I actually get told that my guides are actually a different bunch that come and go, throughout, what you need them to
Yeah.
over time.
Yep.
But I do have a team which really feel like family. They kind of feel like a galactic family, and they've guided me since I was very young, and have a very strong, audible voice that I can hear. It's very just like having a conversation just with you and anyone else. It's very strong.
Mm.
And every couple of years, they guide me into a slightly different chapter of my life, and they've been guiding me to work with water more so in the last year or so. And this has been really interesting for me because it's challenging sometimes to trust the guidance that you get, because sometimes it's not the most practical of guidance to try and implement into one's life. But that's where the trust comes in, and where we just have to
Yeah.
flow with it.
And it is trust, isn't it? And I think you've been, you know, spiritually evolving for a very long time, and I think you've probably gained enough of that trust really to know that you really do get guided into the best place, eh?
You do,
And you have
exactly.
some really fun adventures as well, because you don't really know what the end thing is up there that you're being led through to, but it's fun on the way. Anyway, yes.
Exactly, yeah, but good segue because I don't know the end point of this yet, but
Yeah.
that's why talking about it though is part of the whole kind of game and project that goes behind this trust thing. It's like, well, talking and seeing where things lead, and you never know what's going to turn up. So
Yeah, for sure.
and I guess to sort of give a foundational overview for those listening, like I have been born and known that I've been born on this planet with a very specific purpose and mission, primarily as an overarching like operating system, you know, the main key thing that I'm always guided to is that whatever work I do, it's about reminding humanity that we have all the natural inner technologies and natural resources to heal ourselves and heal the planet and get back on track into our natural ascension
Yes.
projection that we're meant to be in. And you know, we've wobbled around for quite some time on ascending, descending, ascending, descending, you know, like going all over the place. But we're on the ascension now, and water is one of those things that is going to fast track the ascension process, I believe.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And within that kind of overarching mission for my life purpose, there's also, you know, other little projects and chapters that go into that. And the next main chapter, which I've spoken about a bit before on other things with you, is around being an energy alchemist, a quantum energy alchemist. So being an energy healer or an alchemist, you know, transforming and transmuting energies into something better that allows us to keep on our soul path and into the ascension process is like the next overall kind of governing energy within my system. And then the next thing that kind of governs anything I do is around, because of the type of work that I do, I need to have access to very pure peace within my heart to do the type of work that I do.
Yeah.
And, you know, over time, of course, you know, with healing and stuff, you can turn that on very fast. You know, like whenever you do a healing session or, you know, doing a water ceremony, you know, that access into that kind of realm is very, very quick. But in terms of day-to-day realities as well, it does govern other things. It governs my relationships that I either hold on to or let go of. You know, the activities that I do or don't do. It's kind of like this overarching thing. It's like, can I maintain the peace in my heart to do my life mission with these other things coming in and out of my life? And so that's kind of another governing thing within my energy field. And then sort of going in through the layers of kind of like what propels me forward with things that I do is then obviously, you know, I listen to my team for all of those things that I've just mentioned, but then they will give me like little chapters or little things that I go on. And
Right.
sometimes these last a couple of years, or, you know, I don't know how long the water thing will last for, but they said that it's going to be quite an intense focus of mine for at least 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't know what they mean by that in the end. I'm assuming that it means that there'll be enough people already on the planet doing the water work by that stage that I can then put my focus somewhere else.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe, or it might be something, I don't know, maybe I'll go into some,
Exactly. Who
yeah, who
knows?
knows.
Yeah.
And so I've always had a reverence for water, you know, and this has happened from a child. I guess if I give a couple of snippets is, I remember when I was about a tween, as you say now, like around 11,
True.
12. Around 11, 12, I started to sort of, you know, have friends sleep over and stuff like that. And I didn't notice until, you know, I had people stay over how it irritated or agitated me if they wasted water. And I mean, like, you know, we're brushing our teeth in the bathroom and they'd leave the tap going and I'd be like, turn it off. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But I hadn't realized that with it, you know, that I had that within me, that I was so kind of protective or like a guardian, not a guardian of water, but I just was really trying to look out for it, you know, and I was like, why would you waste it? And I also noticed how people would treat water in terms of even just drinking it. Like even when I was young, when I would fill a glass of water, I remember being very present with it. You know, like as the water came out the tap, you know, these days I'd use the words, you know, having gratitude or love or presence with the water and trying to infuse it with that energy. You know, as a
Yeah.
child, I didn't quite have those words, but I knew I felt present with it.
Mm.
I understood that somehow that liquid intelligence that was coming out of the water was about to go in me. And therefore, I need to hold a certain space within myself when I'm consuming it. And also, I remember growing up being very alerted by certain things like articles in news stories. Like I don't watch TV now, but when I was growing up, the TV used to be on, quite a lot. Like the news used to be on every night, and so any news stories about water would catch my attention. And we used to get magazines like The Listener and the Time magazine into the household, and when they had water articles, I still remember, not word
Yeah.
for word, but almost, all these years later, the articles I would read about water. And I remember right then, back in the this would be like the early 90s, I remember that water articles being around, in the future, water is going to be a scarce resource. There's going to be a war over water. It's, our clean water is becoming limited. Back then we were talking about charging for water, and I know some regions, not all in New Zealand, but because overseas you do have to pay for the water that you get in the house often. And so I remember all these articles, and I remember thinking, wow, so something really caught my attention about the whole importance of water in our, not just for us as a nutritional thing and a hydration thing, but also globally and economically and environmentally. And water is, it's something that is my teacher. Like water, we all have different kind of spiritual teachers as we go through life. And those teachers will come and go depending on what we're ready to learn. And at the moment, water is my teacher. For primarily in the last decade or so, I'd say my children have been my primary spiritual teachers. And then about a year or so ago, water really, really stepped up, and it's teaching me a lot. And I don't have all the lessons from it to share yet, because like I say, it's an ongoing journey. But one of the things that really came to mind as I started this journey during the last year was thinking back to my childhood. Because I've been swimming a lot in cold water, like I do cold water immersions. So whenever I'm by a body of water, natural water, like a lake or the ocean, I'll go swimming. And it brought me back to a memory when I was about 12, and I went on my first overseas trip with some extended family who were all into diving. We went to Rarotonga, and all the adults went diving with diving tanks on to see shipwrecks. And myself and two other cousins, I was 12 at the time, we were just swimming around on the surface. We were too young to go actual diving with them. And we could see the top of a shipwreck with our snorkel glasses on. And the top of the shipwreck was about 25 meters below the surface of the ocean. And my other two cousins were boys, and I'm just saying that because there's a competition thing,
Yes. I get it.
And they were, we were all joking around, and we were a little bit bored because, the adults are taking hours, or, seemed like forever. We were like, oh, how about we try and touch the top of the shipwreck? And I was like, yeah, okay, because I was like, oh, I'll keep up with them. I'll keep up with the boys, no worries. And the first male cousin went down, and he didn't get it. He's actually very, very good at swimming, and he works with the ocean now, but he didn't touch the top of the shipwreck, and so he came back up. It was my turn second, and I thought, right, I'm going to do it. And sometimes when I get into this mindset of I'm going to do it, I just do. And regardless of the impractical things like, oh, do I have enough oxygen, right? So I went down, I did touch the top of the shipwreck. But on the journey back up, which was another 25 meters, I remember seeing the light of the sun, like above the water surface, and going back towards it. But I had my flippers fall off, and so I lost speed really, really quickly.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, and I could feel myself really on the edge, like of having no oxygen. There's a thing that comes over your body where it wants to gasp for air. And I remember going, okay, what do I do? And I remember my team kicking in, like my guidance, my staff family or my team kicking in and saying, you need to stay calm, and you need to program or command my consciousness that if I do pass out or go unconscious, that I do not breathe in the liquid, the ocean. And I was like, oh. So I kind of was like, okay, how do I do that? And I remember doing something just like a zip zap thing through my consciousness saying do not, if I pass out or do not have any voluntary control over my system, my body, do not breathe in the liquid. And as I was doing that, I remember kind of losing consciousness as I was going up but I did stay really calm and really peaceful. And this is by no means a near-death experience, but if I don't have another word for it, but it's like a near-death experience, like kind of on the
Yeah.
edge.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I passed out for a bit. I don't know how long for, maybe 5, 8 seconds or something, I'm not really sure. But I had that real feeling of being just completely surrendering to the water and feeling its majestic power, which is
Mm.
similar to the rawness of the earth and natural disasters or anything anywhere. I get the same feeling when I'm around volcanic activity, actually, like in
Yeah.
New Zealand. So there's this real surrender to the majestic power and of the water, but I somehow trusted it. There was no fear in it, and I do actually, my consciousness went to that place of pure consciousness of light, and I remember actually going, oh, this is where people go to where they die. And I remember seeing the light and feeling really comfortable and kind of interacting with familiar people that had passed over and all that kind of stuff, and kind of having that floating towards the light. And it was a really, really interesting feeling because I knew I wasn't going to die, but I just had enough in that sort of consciousness or that lack of
Yeah.
consciousness, however you sort of want to describe it, that I've just felt that kind of like, oh, this is what death is all about. And it was water that brought me that experience and that knowledge, and that's something that I really carried through all my life. It's one of the biggest gifts that water has given me, and of course I got to the top somehow. I don't even, just
Yeah.
got there. And when I got to the top, I did gasp for air, and I hadn't swallowed any water, and totally fine. It's and so everything was totally fine. Obviously, I'm here talking to you now, so I lived through it. But it was just the biggest gift that water's ever given me.
Yes. That was huge.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And from that moment, I've had such reverence for it, but it taught me so much because um, I don't know how long in life it would have taken me to understand those realms, that I entered into in that kind of like near death experience, like just where I went kind of unconscious for a bit.
Yeah.
In other ways, I mean, we can, I've in my adult life, I've explored, tons of things like astral travel and remote viewing and meditation and leaving your body and entering into pure consciousness and all these other things. But that's all very, very easy for me. But I believe that it's part of the experience that water taught me then that allowed me to sort of go into those realms really quickly and have complete trust
Yes. Yes.
in all that.
And sort of identify them, eh?
Mm,
Like like there's a knowing of them. I totally get what you're saying in that. I've experienced similar, but that was through my brother being a bully and suffocating me, closing off my nose and my mouth and then holding me there like that for I remember passing just on the verge, sometimes passing out, coming back, that movement of in and out of that. And then
right.
when I broke my leg and I had to go into surgery and they put the gas mask over me, the oxygen mask, I just went into panic and I woke up in that panic. God. Now, when I think about that, going through theatre, having everything done, I had to plate everything up and put my leg back together. But in that moment, or my ankle actually, and in that, coming out of that, recognizing the panic I'd gone in and then coming out in it as well, I was thinking, oh my God. And anyway, I've done all the work on that now, but that wasn't pleasant. But I also, for me, I find it really difficult. I probably need to do some breath work really to actually expand my lung capacity because I cannot hold my breath like I used to at all. And also, when you're talking about the cold swimming in the oh, goodness me, I can't stand cold water, cold.
Yeah.
I lose my breath even when I go in for the first swim of the summer, and it's warm,
Mm-hmm.
hot, and get into that cold water. Oh my God, I just lose, I'm gasping like that. I just can't. I can train myself. And I've often thought I need to do that what's his name?
Like Wim Hof and Marcel Hof.
Wim Hof,
Yeah,
that's
Wim Hof.
him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And do a bit of that and get myself sorted on it because I really have that issue. And I've often thought I wouldn't be able to do those cave dives, where they go in under. That just freaks me out. It's like, no way. you'd manage that all right.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Anyway,
yeah, I mean,
I,
I've always enjoyed it, but I also, I mean, I've been trained and done training with Marcel Hoff, who's Wim Hof's brother. So, I mean, he's coming out this summer. He comes out each summer to New Zealand, and he and I are working together this summer, like doing breath work and cold immersion. So, if we're in the
okay.
area, join us.
Wow. I have heard of him coming out before. So yes, I'll get in touch and find out dates and all the stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
yeah.
Mm.
And but that's part of the approach as well as entering water, like any water, but you know, like with cold immersion, this applies to that as well, is actually entering it in a really conscious and fearless state.
Yes.
Because as you go into cold water, part of it is that our brain anticipates that it's going to be uncomfortable. And sure, it is a bit uncomfortable, but it's also going into that place where, like, we always take 3 really nice, deep, calm breaths before we enter the cold water, or more
Yeah.
if you need it. And you're going into a state of no expectation as well. So we're trying to say to ourselves, well, don't expect it to be cold, because you're kind of going on past experience, you know, like going,
Yeah, for sure.
oh.
Yeah.
And when you enter into it, I approach it like I'm becoming one with the water. So I'm aware that it's cold, but because I'm willing to become one with the water, I'm trying to experience it for what it is, rather than giving into perhaps what my nervous system or my brain anticipates it to be, you know, like cold.
Right.
And everyone shivers and goes, oh, and, you know, it has a reaction. I'm trying to say, actually, just be really calm and listen to the water and become one with the water and just be with it for a while, you know, and it's actually, I mean, I enjoy it now because I get out and I feel really stimulated, you know, like there's all the,
Yes.
you know, the body feels amazing, you know, going from cold and into warm, and it really increases the circulation. So the water's really healing for those sorts of reasons too. And
Mm.
um, yeah, and with the sort of journey in terms of the consciousness of water as well, it's, I mean, we are water, we're at least 70% water, if not more. And you know, our whole composition as a human being is just a microcosm of the macrocosm. You know, like we are made up of all the same kind of minerals and elements um, and chemicals and everything that the earth is. You know, like the
Mm.
earth is at least 70% water, so are we. You know, and
Yeah.
you know, if you want to be the change that you want to see in the world, you know, you've got to change yourself from the inside out. So when I'm working with water, I originally started working with water from the inside out part, like with the human form. And now in the last year, I'm going more out into the world in terms of the earthly, you know, plane.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching Reiki since about 2008. And around that same time, I, you know, was introduced to Dr. Emoto's work, the Japanese
Mm.
researcher.
Beautiful way.
Yeah, and he's really, I just love his work, and like, you know, and rest in peace because he's passed now, but he just showed how our intentions absolutely structure water. So he had this beautiful methodology of being able to freeze the water and look at the crystals within water and see that water takes on beautiful shapes or otherwise, depending on our intentions and our
Yeah.
thoughts. And
Yeah.
that shows how we and our consciousness and how we think completely structures the water within us in our body as well as around us.
Mm.
And it's always been a principle that I've introduced into, like when I've taught Reiki or when I do energy alchemy or anything like that, because it's one thing to receive or participate or facilitate healing, but you can undo it with your thoughts. You can actually, you know,
Mm.
go back to the very same place if your thoughts also aren't worked on. And
Mm.
for some people, seeing how water, how their thoughts influence water is enough of a visual and real life kind of tactile thing
Yes.
to change their thought patterns.
Yes.
So, and over the last, say, 15, how many years? Oh, yeah, about 15, 16 years of doing that with my Reiki students, I've seen remarkable results. But and the first thing people will say to me, because they've got that healing archetype, you know, that's why they've come to a Reiki class. They say, oh, I
Yeah.
don't want to be mean to water, because for those that don't know, the water experiment that Dr. Emoto does, it's on YouTube if people want to look at Dr. Emoto's water experiment. But you get 3 jars of rice, 1 cup of rice in each jar. You put 1 cup of water in each jar. They're all sterile jars. and you have one control jar, which is something you just ignore, you don't do anything with. And then the other two jars, you have one that's got like a high frequency intention or word or something with it. So that could be love, it could be gratitude, saying thank you, appreciation, anything like that. So something really positive and beautiful. Or it could be Reiki, like if you're doing a healing experiment. The other jar is something of a negative vibration, you know, like the word hate or angry or something similar to that, like a lower vibrational word. And a lot of people say, oh, I can't be mean. I can't say I hate you to a jar of rice, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, and I get it, but I challenge everyone, and it's very rare to meet someone that does not have a negative thought looping in their head.
For sure.
Yeah, and so, and especially in level one Reiki as well, you know, like, or if people are starting out on that kind of journey, it's like, well, okay, completely understand that you don't want to be mean to nature or to food or to rice or water, completely get that, but go into your mind, and if you catch yourself saying anything that's of the lower vibration, that's what you're going to say to the rice. And it's really confronting because people don't, well, it can be quite hard to admit what you say to yourself. It can be hard
Yeah.
to say, actually, I look in the mirror and I go, you're ugly, or I don't like the way you look, or you're
Yeah.
fat, or you're stupid, or you're an idiot, or I can't do this. Like people, I mean, it's uncomfortable to admit, but anyway, that's my challenge to people. I'm like, well, I know you don't want to say I hate you to a jar, but there'll be something else in there.
Yeah.
And so they say that to the jar of rice in the lower negative jar of rice. And so over about 30 to 60 days, they can see the changes, really dramatic changes within the rice.
Mm.
The one that they've done something negative to, like calling it an idiot or whatever, they can see it grow really toxic mold within that. Really
Mm.
dark, it's really
Yeah.
visible, it stinks, you know, it's really off. And that's their thoughts. You know, I mean,
That's good.
they
Yeah.
created that.
Yeah.
And what they see in that jar is what they're doing to the inside as well. You know, so I
Yes.
mean, that's why thoughts really do shape you, really, really creates your reality.
Mm.
And with the Reiki jar or the love jar, like the positive one, sometimes they can go for a really long time without growing anything. You know, it's just
Mm.
pure, like a little bit of murky, like white water, but you know, you'd still go, oh, I could cook that and eat that. You know, it looks all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And if anything, it might grow a little bit of white fluff, you know, but it doesn't look off-putting. It doesn't look toxic necessarily, you know.
Mm.
So that's just a really good example to show how our thoughts and our vibration, our thinking, everything just shapes the water within us
Yeah.
and our
Yeah.
own health. And then kind of going on a bit, but that's kind of like the
No, that's,
start of the kind of water
yeah.
journey. And now, during the last year, my guides have really instructed me to start working externally on a different, you know, out there, like with bodies of water, like lakes and oceans and aquifers, and you mentioned underground caves, that too.
Yeah. Gosh. So when you say working with them, what does that involve? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, so so I follow my guidance in terms of where my team tell me to go, and it started with actually going. I was at the time living in the North Island. I've just recently kind of started traveling now full time to do this water project,
Mm.
um, and my guide said you need to start in the South Island, and I went, okay. And I thought, gosh. And I asked my aunt to come with me because I'm a solo parent with two children. And I thought, oh, uh, if I'm going to be going off doing these water things, I'll ask my aunt to come along and help as well. And she's very spiritual, and you know her, Denise. And so we work
Yes.
together with the water, and she has this
Yeah.
beautiful element of light language, and has a real presence to her when doing like working with water and ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
So she agreed to come, and we went down south, and it was interesting how it worked out because it was the same time as the Pink concert in Dunedin, and there was no accommodation anywhere. And I was like, oh, and this is where I sit down at the round table with my team and go, what's this about? I dragged my family down the South Island because you told me to start with water here, and now I've got no accommodation. And I said, that's really irresponsible, me being a mother and having nowhere for my children to sleep. And, you
Oh,
know, so this is how I kind of talk. I mean, me and my team, we talk, you know, very
oh,
politely
me,
to each
I'm the
other.
same. Yeah.
Yeah. And but they're like, no, just hold on, just trust. And I'm like, oh, okay. And anyway, Denise knows one person down there that she met just once, just through a random, once again, spiritual journey she'd done many years ago. And she made contact with this one person who just happened to have a 5-bedroom home, pretty much vacant other than her, in the region.
All right.
You know, as it happened. And she was just so welcoming, and she didn't mind that it was basically, I think it was only a day before, or anyway, she just said, yep, come on in, come stay, and welcomed us.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
isn't it? I just, yeah. And she said, oh, look, there's this beautiful beach I want to take you guys to. It's called Karatani. I'd never heard of it. And my guides were like, instantly, that's your starting point. And I was like, oh.
Wow.
So she took us to that beach. We had a lovely time walking all around it. And there's this Huriata Point there, which is all about the water, like the water god, the Māori connection to water. And when I walk on the beach there, I have to do it in bare feet. Sometimes people question me about, like, do you have to go barefoot and do you have to touch the water and do you have to be really connected, to get the codes from the water? And
Mm,
while you don't have to, because I completely believe in connecting and things through distance and
yeah,
just through intention,
that's right. Yeah.
but with me specifically, my team are like, no, you need to have your physical body touching things at certain
Yeah.
times and certain points. And I'm like, okay. So walking barefoot on around there near Huriara Point and along Karatani Beach and all that kind of stuff, I could just feel so many codes entering through primarily my feet. I mean, all around the toroidal field of my energy, but
Yeah.
specifically up through my feet. And these codes I could kind of see a little bit visually, and I could definitely sense them. And there was a sound, like kind of different hums and ums and sounds I can't really replicate or do myself. But other than just, I just had to allow myself to be present. So that's the first part of me connecting in with the water, is just being present, because I go
Mm,
into a place where words don't exist. That's challenging when I'm trying to talk to people about it, because I think
I totally get that. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah.
um, so in this place of connection where there's no words, I'll do my best to describe it, and you might be able to add something, to this because you've been there. You understand where it's from. It feels as though when I'm fully present in the moment and being a receptacle for these codes, is that I expand. It's like all the little molecular and cellular and the tiny bit of solid matter that we possibly are. We're 99.999% empty space anyway. And then
Mm-hmm.
for that little bit of like whatever we are left, it feels like everything just expands out, and I sort of become one into this unity consciousness sort of space. And there's no words, and I really don't have much awareness of my body other than knowing that there's something recalibrating within it.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a certain time, whatever time, like you kind of lose track in this thing anyway, but something kind of pulls you out. It's like a slight reminder. It's kind of like a voice or a tone. It goes, time to start densifying back down.
Yes. Yeah.
So the expansion that it will go through starts to come back. And as the density coming back into human form starts to happen, there's a recalibration that goes on, that is absorbing and anchoring and holding on to certain codes and information that's come into my energy field. And then as I come back down onto like the planet and get really grounded, it actually takes me a couple of weeks to have any words that actually come in and can articulate the type of codes or information or data that's
Yeah.
come through. I can't always get it straight away, and I do put myself under pressure to try and find those words, but it actually is quite difficult because I get quite unsatisfied with the English language or any
Mm,
language that I know, because the words aren't there to describe it accurately.
no, I totally get that. It's really difficult. And I know when my team back then were telling me to actually start teaching healing the way that it comes through for me and how that all works, I was just gobsmacked. I'm like, how I don't even know how to explain any of that. I found words, but it still wasn't the right, well, it's as best as I could get in
Mm,
describing it.
mm,
It's hard, in respect to that. And I think today even more so, really, it feels like. And even in what we might describe we do or who we are in it. I think they're just common words that we use because everyone knows what that means. But actually,
yep.
there's a lot of time I don't want to use those words but I don't know how else we can describe. Yeah, it is definitely like that. So yeah.
Yeah. And I
Mm,
think, like a really good example in terms of words, just so that kind of people start to think about the complexity of what happens when you go into these realms and try and find the words that come back. Like the word love is a really common, it's a common word, we use it. And, sometimes people say, oh, what is healing? It is love, or what is this and that? It's love. But the word love, how limited is that? We've got family love, we've got intimate love, we've got I love
yes,
chocolate, which is really different
yes,
to the healing love.
absolutely.
So,
It is.
we have this one word which just has so many different meanings to us all. And until we've experienced, the hundreds of different types of loves, we don't really understand the concept of it, either, like the differences between them all. So,
Yeah.
and I couldn't understand the type of love I have for my children until I actually had that experience, for example.
Yeah.
It's a
Yes.
really, really different love and completely different to the fact if I say I love chocolate, it's not the same way I love my children, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so with the water ceremonies and the purpose around that, so that was kind of the beginning down in the Karatani, and then I went over towards the Castle Hill, Kotatawhiri area in the South Island, and I did a lot of sky watching there. I belong to like a New Zealand C5 team, which is a team that does human initiated contact with extraterrestrials, and part of that gave me some more like further insight. Like during one of those evenings, I was shown. Oh, actually, this is at a different. Sorry, part of that happened at. Sorry, I've got like different locations that I'm thinking about.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah. All good.
at Kotatawhiri, one of the evenings I was taken on a personal journey by a being that was just kind of a mossy green colour and had a really lovely energy. I don't have a name or label for it, but it took me underground
Yes.
and it took me down through the aquifers. So we were kind of it's a mountainous area where we were, and there is a lot of water sources. I didn't, really realize this until after, but it took me down into an aquifer, a very dark. Couldn't see anything other than its being, like its energy, its mossy green energy was enough to light the walls, like the rocks and the aquifers around
Yeah.
me. And it took me on this beautiful journey, and part of that was to give me the feeling and the knowing that the way the water runs over rocks is all part of this project that I'm on. Is actually because I love to talk to rocks as well, but it's all part of the symbiotic relationship of the cosmic waters coming through on this earth and how they interact with the rocks of this earth. It's all part of the ascension process. Like they have a relationship together, where sorry, I might be jumping here a little bit, but so that's one aspect. And so I did go swimming in cave water as well to kind of honour that being. And I'll just jump to another part of the journey, which happened a
Yeah.
few months later, but it is connected. I went to Lake Pukaki in the South Island, and there I saw on the mountains while I was doing sky watching this amazing golden light that happened on the snow line.
Mm-hmm.
At that time of year, it was just the start of winter. Like it was in May, so there was snow on the snow lines. And for those that aren't familiar with the region, Mount Aoraki, which is Mount Cook, it's the tallest mountain in New Zealand, so it had snow on it. And it's a beautiful, I can see a really beautiful vortex of energy and cosmic connection around that mountain.
Mm.
And the mountains all around Lake Pukaki is just gorgeous, had snow all on it, and Lake Pukaki is a really chalk blue lake, and it's filled with glacial water. And the consciousness of that water is really like none other that I've experienced. It's quite unique in terms of the purity in it.
I was just feeling that it's got a purity to it for sure.
It does, yeah. And if I was to contrast it, just to give people a comparison about different lakes and feelings and energy, the purity within Lake Pukeki is a very pure kind of consciousness that holds on to key codes or cosmic codes and information codes that we
Mhm.
as a planet need. I feel holds and anchors them really well and really strongly. Whereas by comparison, if I go swimming in, say, Lake Wanaka, which is a beautiful lake as well, but interestingly enough, that lake for me, it holds on to the energy of people more.
Right. Yeah.
And the way Lake Wanaka is, it's it's surrounded by mountains as well, but the mountains and the rocks in that lake seems to just hold on to all the energies of the people that either visit or pass by or swim in it or
Right.
whatever. But
Yeah.
it's more of a people realm lake and the energies and the stories that it has.
Yeah.
Whereas Lake Pukaki doesn't feel people oriented as such. It seems to hold more cosmic information. And say when I've gone to Lake Rotopanamu and I've done a water ceremony there, that energy there is, to me, is very starlight. It's like I see it absorb starlight, which is a different type of light to sunlight. And moonlight is also kind of sunlight because it's a reflection of the sun. But
Yeah.
the way light travels from the stars and then gets absorbed into Lake Panamu, that's a really different synergy. It's a different type of light that really gets encoded into that lake.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, that Lake Rotopanamu, I took that water and I placed that into Central Park water in New York. Like that starlight from all that information coming from galaxies away, and they've traveled through the universe for many light years,
Yeah.
and entered into the cocoon or the body of New Zealand, and then infused the purity and the consciousness of New Zealand. It asked to be taken over to Central Park in New York, and we did a
Um,
ceremony there just recently, a few weeks ago. So it's interesting how different lakes talk to me or give me
yes.
information and tell
Yeah.
me about where they want to go. And I've
What
kind of
about,
digressed, so I'm sorry if I've lost you on that because my
no, that's all good. I was going to ask you about Taupo. What do you pick up in that? Because I get quite a starlight type energy with the Taupo lake as well.
yeah,
Panamu's not far away. Oh, I mean, it all under the same monga, isn't it? But
yeah, it all really feeds into itself really
yeah,
well. The interesting thing with Lake Taupo, and I'm about to go on a journey to the Kaimanawa wall, if you want to call it a wall, but
yeah,
whatever we want to describe it as.
yes,
So my guides have specifically told me these three waterways. I don't quite want to say aquifers, or streams, but they must be quite ancient because I know they aren't there on the surface anymore. That go from the Kaimanawa region that feed into Lake Taupo, but
right.
also feed into Rotopanamu and some other surrounding areas. And there's an activation that I want to go and do around, I don't know if it'll be November or December this year, but I want to try and spend the night there near the Kaimanawa forest and go in there and do some work, trying to activate
Beautiful.
the waterways there to go into Lake Taupo. And the information I've been told about Lake Taupo with the waters there is, I love the rawness and the energy because of the volcanic activity around it.
Mm,
The information and the type of cosmic energy that is in there, and starlight energy as well, but more than just starlight, because there are a lot of cosmic, or when I say cosmic, I mean like galactic
yes,
beings and craft that actually deposit codes into that water.
I totally get that.
Yeah. And as part of a triangle, I've been told that that region, Lake Taupo, is one of the corners of a really important energetic triangle. And the next kind of corner is Uluru, like Central
Yeah.
Australia. And then the other one I've been told is somewhere like an island out in the Pacific. I haven't actually looked at a map, so it's probably not even a triangle, but this is just how they show me.
Yeah.
It could be something like Easter Island, that's what they keep saying. It's something like Easter Island, where there's
Okay.
we call it, is it the moai, the kind of like acupuncture needles, like these big statues that are
Yeah,
infusing like a lot of energy into one of the islands out there as well, like so Easter Island. So
yeah.
Lake Taupo seems to be like this triangle. That's how they've always described it. It's a really important energetic triangle, and whatever happens within Lake Taupo affects those other main 2 points and everything that's enclosed within it.
Right. That makes so much sense to me. I was showing myself arriving as a star light ball, landing in the Lake Taupo, and then walking out,
Oh, cool.
sort of humanoid, but with all the magic. Early Maori, and they felt very threatened. And there was we had to do there was a huge clearing um, that I did when I published my book, and I was taking it through and I was doing a little tour. And yeah, Taupo, man, it was big, really big. Lots of souls that were still trapped in that time. So yeah, very interesting. But yes, that was really interesting. I've had many different remembering of times and around and through with that lake water.
Mm.
Lots. So yeah, but no, I get that, and the codes definitely, and I can feel them for sure. We went up to Punamu, Lake Punamu, to go and have a look. We were over at the Four Winds temple site, and then we drove over there, and we were going to go in. And Bev and I were walking up the pathway to go in, and I just got contaminated, and it was like, oh, this wall just went up, and I couldn't go. I said, I can't go any further. I'm not going in there. It's been contaminated. We were staying the night in Taupo, and on the I don't know, Taupo page, I think it was on the Taupo. Yeah, they just dropped 1080 in there.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, I was just like, what? But
Yeah.
anyway, as it goes. So yeah, there was some clearing work. We did that then. I did anyway. But yeah, sad, eh? I just was sad by that. But I yeah, went and worked on the water because it was the water and the bush too, but I knew that had gone into the lake. It
It
dropped it
does.
over the lake.
Yeah. Yeah, all those poisons, and that's the interesting thing. I mean, that's the sad thing about all the water bodies of water that we have is that yeah, there's man-made chemicals that go in and cause damage,
Hmm.
and all of the water is connected. It is
Yeah.
unity consciousness. Like every little tiny molecule of water that will be in Lake Rotopanamu,
Mm.
and that will end up everywhere at some point because it will go down through the aquifers. It will at some point come back shooting up, some point
Yeah.
be evaporated into our atmosphere, or at some point fall back down somewhere else on planet Earth. Like, well, every little bit of mist and water and rain and puddles and everything is connected. So
Does.
for us as humans to think that we can just, dump a poison in one spot and that's just an isolated thing that's not going to affect us all. Of course it does.
Yeah.
We know that,
I
but
know.
yeah,
Sad, eh?
yeah.
I was showing uh, I was taking a group through actually. I used to run these healing groups just online where we'd connect into Papatūānuku, Earth Mother, and she'd take us on a journey somewhere, and we'd do some energy work with wherever she might have pointed or directed. Everyone had different journeys. They were all on their own separate journey, but when we all shared, oh my goodness, how many were the same? It was
Mm.
amazing. But anyway, in that I was shown, we'd pick out sometimes from the sharings we'd had a set up for the following week as to what area we were going to go into. And this time it was on the Antarctica, I think it was. And anyway, we went in, and the icebergs showed me. It's like because there was the worry around the melting of
Mm.
all of those, and all of that. But anyway, what was shown to me was that they were holding these codes from really ancient time, and that these now were needing to be released, and they were going to help with our ascension process, the evolution of the planet and our waters were going to be, because it was going to filter out, it was like showing me how it was going right through. But what it did show, it was like seeing a jellyfish and the brain, the head, and then it had the tentacles coming down, and it was all just showing me all of that. So it was like brain, um, spinal column, and then it was actually going into the bottom of the sea, so right into the land as well, touching.
Hmm.
And it was showing me how it was filtering through her body to reach throughout the whole, go through the whole mass. And it was just beautiful. And that, touching your toes into the water, putting your feet in the sea, it's like these codes are going to start moving through bodies and bringing through. And when you're speaking about that, I'm like, oh my goodness, here we are,
Ah.
many different ones are feeling those codes actually activating now. And I don't know whether that's the beginning of it way back then being shown, all of that. That was about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
Mm.
And it was it was really, really beautiful. The feeling, the energy of the codes themselves. It was like, yeah, man, I can feel this. It's going to clear a lot of bodies and, yeah, activate a lot.
It's really insightful, and I think that's going to happen more and more. Because I know that, like, say the experience I'm happening, I'm only just one of like many. There'll be so many people out there doing this already. We just don't know of each other. You know what I mean? Like,
That's right, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I touched on a little bit before about when I was at Lake Pukaki and I saw a golden light on the
Mm,
mountain range, and it was interesting. This light went on and off many times, and I go through all the analysis of, can it be human made, and we, do all that, and other people saw it as well, with their real eyes, because sometimes we talk about third eye sight, mind
yeah.
sight, and there's real sight. So I saw it with real sight, and it was really, really quite galactic. It was a portal that was opening up on the mountain. And after a little while, I don't know how long, maybe 10, 15 years of just 10, 15 minutes, sorry, of this opening up and closing a little bit, we actually saw a craft come in, and it looked like a shooting star. So if you think about a larger shooting star, but it went straight down from the sky into the snow line, into that like actual golden portal, went
Mm-hmm.
straight in. I was like, whoa. And that's when my third eye then took over and continued
Right.
sight of seeing the craft and the energy of that craft and the beings, and it actually go down into the mountain. And the energy from this craft dispersed itself through the aquifers of the
Yeah.
mountain, the inside of the mountain. I could see it feeding down into Lake Pukaki. And the energy was golden as well. So it sort of kept, like, had quite golden sparkles and all these different shapes and coding. And it just, I won't say rippled, because it kind of diffused through
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
And it gave me such kind of clarity and clear vision around how some of the cosmic codes are coming in, to the planet. It's not the only way, of course, but it's just one of the ways that it's
Yes.
coming in. And they went then closer to the end of Lake Pukaki, that's closer to Mount Aoraki. And a lot, not all, but a lot of the codes went there, and they got anchored in. And it got anchored in that, what my team were telling me, that it's got anchored into an old wisdom school, which there were three of in that region. This one is
Mm.
particularly known and anchors in like a library, like a lot of cosmic information, but it's
Yeah.
information about the truth of our history. But when they say the truth of the history, of course, they instantly remind me that, time is not linear. It's our reality. It's the truth of
Yes.
our everything. So all the information is there. And part of the reason why they go through the aquifers and through the rocks and through the water and is, rather than just going directly into that spot, is
Yeah.
that there is a succussion and a movement that happens with the rocks where the water and the codes get potentized. There's an intensification of like the energy or the knowledge that emits from the codes
Yeah.
when it runs over the rocks. So the water and the rocks are really important. It's all that succussion, it's all that movement. When that happens, it means that there's more chance of us picking up that information because there's more energy emitting from each little code that
Right.
comes
Yes. Yep.
down. And so that was kind of getting gathered and anchored into this library. But the very beings that delivered it there in the first place then kind of took, like, it's like it wasn't a book, but I don't know how else to describe it metaphorically. It's like they took a book of other coded knowledge from us, and then took that back up to the cosmos to share somewhere else. I don't know where, but it's obviously like this exchange, this constant exchange
Yep.
that we have with them. And my team have definitely told me that, you know, this happens all over the place, and this is part of why I'm trying to share water, is like, you know, like taking, say, Lake Bukaki water. That
Yes.
water there said to me just recently when I went over to America, take me over. And I said, where do you want to go? And so I went to a different couple of places in America, but it said I want to go to Washington and to the Capitol, and it's election time almost.
True. Yes.
So these cosmic waters and all this library of our truth and our history and our interconnected, our interstellar connection with everything, you know, and all these golden codes, really wanted to go to the Capitol, to the Parliament buildings. And so, you know, and I wasn't looking at a map or anything. I just got a taxi to drop me off there, and you know, they have that big obelisk, you know, that big monument there. Don't know if you know, but it's interesting because both Washington and Central Park have this big kind of concrete obelisk, which is almost like trying to take information from the cosmos, like from, you know, whether you want to call it our ancestors or our galactic connections or wherever we came from. It's like almost like they want to draw on all that energy and that information. And then there's water really close by, huge grounds of water that then lead up to Parliament. And that's really interesting how, you know, these very powerful places on Earth are constructed that way, like with a connection to the cosmos, with the information going through the water to the people that are making decisions for us and our society, like government and so forth. So anyway, that's where the Lake Bukaki water wanted to go. And so I did a water ceremony there in the big waters that lead up to the White House. Is it the White House? Is it called? I don't know, the big Parliament buildings there. See,
Yeah.
I pay so little attention to the actual politics of because I just listen to my team and they just say, just go here, do that, that's the building, that's the lake. And I don't even like look at the labels or like what things are called. So if I get things if I don't name things right, that's probably
Yes.
why.
I get it. Totally get that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So that's sort of part of the journey and part of the project. I've called it Tuarangi Project because that means cosmic waters. It's a loose translation for cosmic waters, where I kind of believe it's around transmitting all the cosmic codes and our truth codes that are in water around the world. And the more that we have access to that in any way you like, whether it's through physical touch or just putting your awareness onto water with a sense of reverence and gratitude for it, you will receive those codes anyway. It's really about just bringing, getting more and more people to kind of just look at water, just to have awareness of its magnificence, of its pure consciousness, of its ability to conduct energy, of its ability to amplify the codes. And it can teach us so much on so many levels if we just actually allow ourselves time to be with it. And you don't have to understand what goes on within you straight away. I know I've had times where I've gone swimming, for example, like when I've been swimming in Lake Bukaki. Once again, my team told me to do this. The water was only like maybe 2 degrees. It was very, very cold. But they said you have to go physically in it, even though I had a bit of a debate. I don't mind cold water, but it's like, do I really have to physically go in this? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay. So I physically went in there to receive codes through my being. And when I came out, for no reason, I just started lacrimating, you know, like crying, but it wasn't a crying. It was just a flood of like tears coming out.
Wow. Yeah.
And that lasted maybe about 10 minutes. And when I sort of was asking my team, like, what's this about? The tears just won't stop. But it was about an acknowledgement of listening to the spirit of the water, you know, and being in it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's a beautiful relationship to have with water. And many people on the spiritual path too even will say, like, if they're a little bit psychic, they'll get their main downloads in water. I know many intuitives
Exactly.
that will sit in the bath or a spa pool or in a lake, and that's where they get really clear insight about things. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've always had that connection with water, but with everything. We like you say, you talk to the rocks, you talk to the trees, It's just who we are. Well, it's maybe not everyone, but definitely it's been my life, my world. So I constantly tune into different parts, and if I'm at the beach, all sorts of places. But yeah, it's a great journey, eh? And the sharings, like the information, you can't, like, a lot of the time I've had so much that I just wouldn't have thought of it. It's not come from my brain,
Yeah.
It's not me making up a story. It's like I wouldn't even know that that's how it rolls. So I just love it. I've always loved it. And like you're getting led to deepen this in lots of ways. It's just a deepening, and that there is such it's like an honor, really, isn't it? It's such a privilege.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really exciting, just not quite knowing what's next, but knowing that it's
Yeah,
something kind of good and deep. And it's the sort of thing you can't learn or study any other way other than just trusting the guidance and that you get to.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a great journey, and it's such an intimate one as well. You do get to know those places more intimately, and their history. But yeah, beautiful, Gina. That is so beautiful. We had a bit of a cutout there. I hope it didn't cut out. Were you still seeing my Zoom thing working? And
I did lose you for a minute, yeah, oh, like a
okay,
few seconds. So, and
it
then you
felt
came.
like it kept going, I think.
Okay, that's good.
Hope so anyway.
I think it's
But
fascinating that you came into Earth in the water. I
yeah,
kind of want to know more about that.
yeah, that was really interesting. There were quite a few of us. We all just dropped out of the sky, came and landed into the water, and the water transformed us into body, naked, walked out. There was like I remember thinking, did we actually even have a gender? Like it was like
Mm. Hmm.
that. But we were magical. We could really, like, we were just using all our abilities, and we became a bit of a threat.
Uh,
Mm.
it's so
So
interesting how water transports us, in
yeah.
terms of even like just listening to your story, it reminds me even on a more kind of a denser scale, where we come into this world when our waters break. That's where we transport through ourselves through water from one realm, our mother's tummy, which is a combination
Mm,
of being on earth and the other place that we came from. And then our waters break, and that's how we enter this reality that we're currently in.
yeah.
And when we die, well, I have quite a strong interest in this, with astral travel and out of body experiences and things like that. And because co-hosted a few retreats where we take people on astral travel journeys, and it's interesting watching the energy of people that do go on these journeys. It's
Yeah.
doesn't happen all the time for everyone, but or even when I've been around people that have passed, in front of me, like it died,
Mm,
there's quite a mist, like our energy, our soul, our consciousness that leaves the physical body. When it does, there's kind of a bit of watery mist that is
yeah.
there as well. That's how the energy kind of looks anyway. And I feel like we are going to start expanding our vocabulary and our understanding of water as the decades go on, because we're
Mm,
only just coming into this decade. We're only just starting scientifically to say that there's 4 phases of water, not 3. When I was a child, it was 3. It was like solid, gas, liquid. And now we are acknowledging there's a 4th, like there's a plasma gel phase, and that's really, really important to learn to understand. But my own team have said, well, there's a lot more categories of water than that.
yes.
And they have, said, the water is the way we enter this earth, and it's the way we exit. And it's how we expand our consciousness. And so all that for me is still a learning. I'm still learning those lessons and letting water teach me that stuff. But it's
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
it is interesting. And just that image for me is like, the creation of baby in form anyway, like in that water, like you say, in the sack, that water's actually life force, and that's what that lake seemed to be for us.
Mm.
It was very interesting because I got taken to, I was getting told, go to the west side of the lake. So I went around the west side and I was like, I don't even know where. Like you just know, you know, you don't know where the heck you're heading, but you just know when you get there. Knew where to park the car, knew that this was the place. So walk through, go back onto the lake edge, and of course it's all stones and things around that side. And chose to sit on a rock, and I'm saying, is this the right area? Are we in the right place? I looked down, white feather at my foot.
Ah.
And then over on the right side of me on the lake water was actually a little whirlpool that was happening.
Mm.
And I just knew that was, we were pay attention to that. I was on my own, pay attention to that. And I actually recorded it. Got it on a recording. And this was then directing me to it was sort of almost like a lever that was directing me through to the mountain behind Taupo at the back of the city there.
Mhm.
And then everything just started opening up and showing me what was going on. But the funny thing was too, we'd had weird energy at the motel. It was like there was something sitting around because we were events and all sorts of things. I was promoting my book and all sorts. So we were busy, and it was like, oh, we'll catch up with that later, And so we were sort of keen to get back to the motel in the evening to be able to sit in and see. And oh my goodness me, there was a lot going on. It was so full on, but it was really, it went on for days actually. And then when we actually left Taupo, we went through to head through to Wakatani.
Mm.
And so we went through there, and I got directed to stop on the side of the road there and work with the water, the lake. Don't know that first lake that you go to. I used to know, I used to live in that area, but now I've forgotten. But anyway, we had to stop there, and there was a huge clearing of stuff in there as well,
Was it the
all
Blue
connected
Lake
to that.
or yeah?
No, it was there's Rota Iti and there's Rota Ma. So it's the first one. I think Rota Ma's the second one
Mm-hmm.
as you're coming round to go through to Wakatani.
Yeah.
So it was on that first one, and we honestly stopped, and I just put my brakes on, and there were cars behind me. We had very little room to pull over, but this is where we need to be. God, I was looking in all the mirrors as we were stopping, and but it's incredible. And the storyline, I mean, again, you can't make it up.
No, that's right. Yeah.
It's like the unfolding of all of that was just blowing us away. And a friend who had come, a young girl who was sort of like a bit of an apprentice for me, and she kept hearing, the dead have the answers, the dead have the answers. They need to be told, needs to be told. And that kept for a few days first. That was what we kept getting. And then it all just started unfolding. It was unreal. But
Wow.
yeah, fun, all right. I love it. I
It's
love those.
interesting that you've, and even just talking like this as well, it's like, oh, that's right, I've got, a message. It's because you're talking about the vortex in Lake Taupo, and then as you
Yes.
went on this journey, and it's interesting that it's an important part of my message actually that have forgotten to say is that my team has shown me that vortexes, like you saw, are very, very important, and for two reasons. It's the vortexes in the water, and it's the
Yeah.
vortexes in our heart. And
Mm,
those two things working together, as well as some other components, are really what's going to accelerate a lot of this information, like the truth of our history and the
yeah.
ascension process on Earth and the transformation of our own consciousness and expanding that, how it's all going to get accelerated. And part of it is
Mm,
one, the vortex within the water, and this is where the rocks kind of come in, is that's what structures the water and helps to bring energy into it. But not only that, is that we also have a vortex within our heart. Like if you were actually to anatomically unfold the muscle of the heart, and then study it, it is actually a vortex, like the way that the veins and the arteries go. And if you were to place
Ah,
the liquid through that, it
yeah.
becomes a vortex. And a long time ago, alchemists would believe that the sort of mono powdery type of gold that we have within our bodies, like the tiny, tiny trace amounts that we
Yes.
have, the gold, if you could, in a alchemical way, like through our consciousness, get that gold going in a vortex fast enough at a certain speed and rate through our heart, that's when we would levitate. And that's where we would have kind of these, this kind of understand your own human potential, the things that you can do.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's how you would expand your consciousness and your abilities and your kind of like, we call them superpowers, but they're not superpowers, it's just things that we can do, but I've
I
forgotten.
know.
So it's
Oh,
interesting, there's vortexes in the heart and there's vortexes in the water, and they're both actually really, really important. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That is really interesting. I, I had this vision dream once of teaching my daughter how to levitate, and
ah,
we were out by the water tank, which was interesting.
yep.
Yeah. And I was showing her and then saying, so you do it like this, and trying to explain how to do it and get her to feel more how it felt. But yeah, that was definitely an astral travel thing. That was so happening. Like, it was funny. But yes, oh my goodness, Gina, and there'll be so much more that you'll be able to share with us later on down the track with this water too. I would love to get you back on and see what else this journey's unfolded and
Yeah.
showing you. That would be awesome.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. And thank you for sharing your stories as well. It's always so interesting. That's what I love about these conversations with,
Mm,
with yourself and with anyone, is just like there's just little pieces of the puzzle that keep coming together, and
yeah.
it's great.
Yeah. It is great, eh?
Thank you.
Oh no, this has been wonderful. So thank you so much for all you're doing. And all you are and all you be. And yeah, it's been such a joy having you on. And like I say, we will get you on again. That'll be great. So thank you.
And thank you, Mandy, for doing what you do as well.
Oh,
Deeply appreciated.
pleasure.
Bye bye.
Much love. Bye bye.